As a kid, I loved the sport of football. I still remember the summer going into seventh grade, the anticipation that I had to be able to play football for the very first time. It was overwhelming. That's all I could think about. It consumed me. I had had some other experiences in sports. I played soccer, baseball, hockey, whatever the case is, whatever sport that it was, that's what I was doing. But this was the first time I was ever able to play football. I loved the sport before I could even play it. I don't know what it was. It was just amazing to me. And I grew up and I played every single down that I possibly could until I reached my talent threshold. And then I was left with, well, what am I going to do now? And I was like, yeah, I might as well get into coaching so I can still be involved with football in some way, even though it's not playing, it won't be as good. At least that's what my thoughts were then. I could still be involved in the game. However, the beautiful polarity of strategy and physical mettle fused together was an essence of football that reached a new level of personal enlightenment as I became a coach. I began to look up and admire people like Gus Malzahn and Bear Bryant and Mike Leach and Lou Holtz, among many, many others. But really what I figured out is that football coaching could be my personal vehicle to serve God. The functions of a football coach are never ending. They're 24/7, 365. Of course, we can plan a vacation here and there, but it's within certain windows. And yeah, we're not going to be able to go to that fall wedding. Sorry, everybody. From August to December, you're in season. It's a 24/7 grind. Watching film, breaking down film, planning, meetings, the full 9 yards. There's so much to do and so little time to do it. And then at the NCAA level, they're restricted by how many contact hours that they could have. For after the season, January to February, you're solidifying and making sure all the recruits that are there are going to come there. And then recruiting still goes on and on and on until the next February for recruiting the next players for the following season. So a season in advance you're recruiting for, if not before. From March to April, tons of spring football practice, but even before that, you're participating in clinics, maybe speaking at clinics, lots of different things. And then year-round, you're attending social functions to bring in, hopefully, contributions for your program. And then you've got to lead all aspects of the program, whether it's in season and under the lights or out of season and no one else is around, and making sure everybody's doing what they should be doing to grow and develop as an individual. It is also difficult because many times you have to balance all of the competitive endeavors, right? We got to get better, we got to get faster, we got to get stronger, with the aspect of developing young men and developing your followers, your student athletes, as well as your subordinate coaches. How are they going to get better and transform and lead their position groups better and be a better football coach and be a better human being on and off the field? There's also many unknown risks. College age players are going to do things and take risks that many adults would not. So counseling and educating the student athletes to make sure that they're going to class, that they're making the right choices. That's a full 24-hour a day, 7-day a week job that ultimately, and we'll see later, you have to keep track of and you have to manage. And even though a leader may be doing everything they possibly can, they still might come up short in the end, despite all the effort that they did, all the education that they gave, all the counseling that they were around for, all the community building that they had to lead students in the right direction. Students still could make a mistake. And that effort, it's easy to say that effort is lost, but in reality, what's the alternative if you didn't give the effort? So having the faith and the patience that your efforts can pay off for the organization, for the team, and most importantly, for the followers that you serve, the better the program will be. The better the followers will be, the better the organization will be, and the better the leader that you will be. Some specific duties that a football coach would have would be to hire, maintain, and develop a coaching staff. Are you hiring the right types of individuals, not only from an ethical standpoint, but from a standpoint also that will suit your needs as a servant leader? You have to monitor student athletes' grades and behavior, develop and maintain a culture that's conducive to success. Coaches have to develop student athletes for success on the field and off of the field, not just in the classroom, but in life, to be good husbands and fathers and providers. Coaches have to prevent and handle crises when they presented. All the prevention measures that could possibly occur, sometimes things still happen. And even though it shows up at the bottom of the list here, possibly one of the highest priorities, a leader has to be an exemplar leader, especially if that leader is a servant leader that is going to grow, mold, and develop followers to also become servant leaders. We see an example of leaders serving in the Bible in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, specifically verses 35 through 45. In the passage, it is filled with a plethora of information that is quality for young leaders progressing into new roles. But the true essence is that followers do not serve leaders. It's the opposite. Leaders serve their followers, and it is their call to serve others. And that being a leader is not a glorious thing. You don't get into it for the title and the accolades, but rather leaders are leaders in order to serve for the benefit of the organization and whatever that is. In the passage, James and John asked Jesus, can we be at your right hand? Can one be on the right and the other be on the left and be right next to you and lead with you? And Jesus responds, the cup that I drink, you will drink. And with the baptism with which I am baptized, you will be baptized. But to sit at my right and to sit at my left is not mine to give, but is for those whom it has been prepared. Jesus goes on, whoever wishes to be great among you will be your servant. Whoever wishes to be first among you will be the slave of all. For the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus is telling us, hey, it's tough as a leader. You're going to go through a myriad of trials and tribulations, people not respecting you, people not doing things, people taking shots at you all the time. But ultimately, you are there to serve others, and that is your calling from God. All of which bleeds into my personal leadership style of the ultimate goal of being a servant leader. A servant leader is grounded in transformational leadership, as we know from Borland, Kane, and Burton 2015. That transformational leader aspect of things is influencing through rapport and empathy, intrinsic motivation, individuals and followers. So yes, the rapport in the community is so strong that everybody wants to do well, not just for themselves, but they feel value in being successful in themselves because they know how much it means to the group and the community and the organization. Uckel in 2012 and Borland et al. Show us that recognizing the need, embracing, and developing strategies for successful change are vital in a transformational leader and in a transformational set, which again is in that servant leader component, right? So servant leader builds upon transformational leaders. Moreover, a servant leader has all the transformational components, but also incorporates stewardship, meaning that the leaders puts the followers and the organization above themselves, above everything else, and no one is better than or above, in this case, the football team. The servant leader facilitates followers to become servant leaders themselves, which we found from Reike, Hammermeister, and Chase in 2008, Burton and Welty Peachy 2013, as well as Borland et al. By the very nature of coaching football, there is some transactional leadership aspect to coaching football, especially as it relates to the student athlete playing time. There's 85 scholarships available for student athletes to have, yet only 11 can be on the field at any one time. Hard work and effort does get rewarded, and there is a transactional aspect of coaching football, which thanks to Sinclair Harper Seagrave 2014 and Borland et al., we're able to make that connection to the transactional aspect of coaching football, even though servant leadership is the personal style. And again, even though we're incorporating different styles of leadership, effective leaders do incorporate many styles of leadership depending on their followers, depending on the environment, depending on the specific situation at hand, which we know from Borland et al. Specifically, Burton and Welty-Peachy shows servant leaders have strong moral and ethical components to their leadership styles. And furthermore, the current state of NCAA football needs to change from a strong authoritarian / win-it-all-cast style, and servant leadership allows for high performance outcomes while maintaining strong morals and ethics. Another way to say this would be changing from or shifting from a win-it-all-cost style of leadership to a let's win the right way style of leadership, where we can include sportsmanship from Weissall in 2014. Furthermore, it is our duty to be an exemplar in sportsmanship and having respect for the rules, both written and unwritten, doing the right thing in an ethical dilemma. And furthermore, as it relates to performance, Reike, Hammermeister, and Chase did a study showing that athletes are more intrinsically motivated over their authoritarian leader counterparts. So servant leadership gives us the best of all possibilities as a foundation, even though we'll still need to incorporate different aspects as the situation or environment lends itself to those other styles. With all of that said, if I was creating a Venn diagram of transactional leadership, transformational leadership, and servant leadership, I'd have to put myself opposite the apex of transactional in the middle, right at that red dot. Really grounded in transformational and servant leadership, leaning more towards servant leadership as much as we possibly can, but still recognizing that there is a transactional component as well. Fletcher and Arnold from 2011 stress that all members have to be valued, and when all members of an organization are valued, that builds intrinsic motivation for personal growth and organizational success. So community building is an essential aspect of building a football team. That's not just players. Yes, of course it includes the players, but that also includes the support staff, the coaches, the equipment staff, the video staff, the truck drivers, the bus drivers, everyone. Furthermore, rapport is critical to building a community and establishing a culture of valuing intrinsic motivation and valuing each other. Some possible ways to help build a community could be to set up a formal or informal NBA 2K or Madden tournament on video games, have team meals and position group meals, take the quarterbacks out, take the offensive linemen out to eat, have the defensive linemen come over and barbecue for them. Any type of breaking bread amongst each other is a phenomenal vehicle to build community and build rapport. Communication of roles for each individual is a vital aspect of a positive community. If I have a vision or a perceived role that is different than what my actual role is, I may become disenfranchised with the organization. Bringing support staff coffee or baked goods every once in a while to say, hey, I recognize that you're here and you're doing one heck of a job. Starting each player meeting or position meeting or team meeting with some form of a personal bio. Hey, this is Peter Martin. He's from Spokane, Washington. He was a kicker and an outside linebacker in high school, even though he ended up playing center for us. He's a heck of a player. He loves Van Gogh and Da Vinci as his favorite painters, and he's currently majoring in art history. Anything quick to give some aspect of a different perspectives of different people, to recognize we're not just football players, we're not just football coaches, we're not just in the football program, but also we absolutely are human beings and need to be valued. Both Uckel and Borland et al. Talk a lot about change, and transformational leaders and therefore servant leaders need to anticipate change and have change as a constant in their culture. So as part of the team community building process, one of those things that has to be in there is an aspect of change. And change isn't something that might happen. Change is something that will happen. And it needs to be ingrained into our culture so we can anticipate and successfully navigate change when the need arises. Day and Gregory from 2017 shared that mindfulness creates the ability to critically think and assimilate feedback rather than take feedback as a negative personal attack. When individuals take feedback as a negative personal attack, they're shut off, they're closed off, and they may be successful at a few tasks here and there, but ultimately only if they see value in it, which potentially that value is boosting up their resume for their next job. Moreover, mindfulness, this thought process of we can always get better, and if we strive for perfection, we might not reach it, but we might reach for the stars but land on the moon. We will improve, and we can constantly improve. Having a mindfulness allows us to do that, become more intrinsically motivated, and experience more overall success for the organization. Having positive mindfulness will also potentially allow us to avoid groupthink, where a bunch of strong individuals that are a part of a leadership cadre start beginning to think things because they are a part of the same strong community, and they don't necessarily challenge different viewpoints and speak up because, oh my gosh, the leader says this, the leader's smart, I value the leader's opinion, and therefore I'm not really going to critically think about everything, we're just going to go with it. There's constant pitfalls of groupthink because every aspect, if we have this constant change, every aspect is always looked at, both pros and cons, and will it be successful to the group, and is it in the best interest of the group? Additionally, being able to expose mistakes from the leader helps build that culture of constant change with mindfulness ingrained that allows the critical thinking and allows, hey, change is a part of us. Everything is going to be better with change. And then again, we constantly are thinking, how can I improve? How can I get better? So when I receive feedback, I can assimilate the feedback rather than having the feedback become a barrier to my progress and growth. And as Borland et al. Shows us, that having that mistake is okay, we'll learn from it mentality reinforces that the feedback and the change and the improvement for everyone in the culture is a real possibility, thereby reducing anxiety and instilling confidence for followers to be able to take positive risks. There are many situations for ethical issues to arise in NCAA football. One of them would be violations of rules and how a coach handles those particular violations. Jim Tressel was ultimately forced to resign due to covering up player violations. Players in Tressel's situation got money or tattoos or a variety of other services, car dealerships giving them cars to drive around in exchange for gear or memorabilia, championship rings, athlete-only issued athletic apparel. The athletes were trading their gear for services. Tressel got a message via email that these violations were occurring. Tressel did not share with the athletic director or any other university official. When called on it, Tressel denied it. Of course, more reports came out that clearly showed that Tressel said, hey, no, I knew none of this in any way, shape, or form. Reports came back that he did find out. He ultimately resigned. On the other hand, Lou Holtz, and this was probably 25 to 30 years prior to Tressel's situation, while Lou Holtz was a head coach at Arkansas, he had players involved in sexual assault. He did not cover it up, but at the same time, Holtz didn't broadcast what was going on either. It came to a trial. Newspapers were involved. Holtz instituted discipline policies for the players that were involved as well, handled appropriate discipline-wise, but still remained loyal to his followers. Wade's Dungan and Young of 2013 show that loyalty in football could be a major determining factor of trying to cover up potential violations or ethical crises. And we know from Burton et al. That privacy can be an even bigger concern now within social media and how fast social media can spread false things or true things. No matter what the deal was or the reasoning behind it, Tressel had an obligation, an ethical obligation, to report his knowledge of NCAA violations. Is actually a rule for him to do that and sign it, in which Tressel didn't follow through with. Servant leaders must put the team above themselves. With social media concerns for privacy, ethical dilemmas always favor the side of the best interests of the team. Thornton, Champion, and Riddell, 2012. When faced with an NCAA violation or an ethical concern, quite simply, we must report to the appropriate authorities confidentially and make sure that things stay confidential. Maintain people's privacy whenever possible. Need to implement discipline, not only in preemptive to prevent things, but also in response to NCAA violations, and make sure that just discipline follows each situation. That may include asking your best player to leave the program. Additionally, have to educate. Tell stories of Maurice Clarett, and tell stories of Reggie Bush, and tell stories of all the different possible violations that have happened in the past, in hopes that we can be wiser by learning from other people's mistakes rather than having to make and repeat mistakes ourselves. One could argue that there's one bigger, however, a major ethical issue for all football coaches, head coaches of NFL teams down to assistant coaches at the Pop Warner youth level. Safety is an ethical issue for all of them. And as Thornton et al. Share with us, safety is the largest ethical duty of a coach. We see situations like the Bounty Gate with the New Orleans Saints from the Times-Picayune 2012, where players were being rewarded monetarily by hurting other players. We see concussions and player health and safety issues from the NFL Foundation 2018 that lead to programs for and rule changes for better educated players, but ultimately better player safety for the long-term health of the players and everyone involved. In 2010, a videographer named Declan Sullivan for Notre Dame was at practice. High winds beyond the manufacturer's recommendations brought his scissor lift down to the ground, and Declan passed away as a result of the accident. Leaders always have plans in place to deal with crises, to hopefully prevent them, but also how to manage them if a crisis arises, which we know from Borland et al. The plan must adhere to manufacturers' recommendations for weather or manufacturers' recommendations for specific equipment like sleds or drones or a water spigot. Anything and everything that has a safety component to it have to follow recommendations, and then make sure that any OSHA regulations or any and all applicable laws are followed at all times. And then there's always going to be unique environmental aspects to everyone's situation, to take moments to develop those safety plans and include input from followers, from the people that are using the equipment, whether that's players or managers or a secretary or whoever the case may be. Input from all the individuals needs to be included when developing those safety plans so everyone can stay safe in all unique aspects. Part of that plan is attempt to fulfill the ethical duty of a coach to proactively prevent a crisis. Being able to foresee potential safety issues is a key aspect of a transformative and servant leader. If for whatever reason a safety issue comes about and it is not dealt with in the proper manner, whether it's players or subordinate coaches, all of the rapport and trust is lost. Therefore, the community and the culture that the servant leader worked so hard to build is dissipated. In summary, we have a call to serve from God, as we see in the Gospel of Mark, and that leaders should be servants. Personally, because of my adoration for the game and my enlightened position as I became a coach, I view football as a vehicle to serve the Lord. Servant leadership that's grounded in transformational leadership of intrinsic value and motivations, strong empathy components, building rapport and community while serving others to build future servant leaders from the ranks of the followers, is a major key aspect of success for football coaches, despite however many authoritarian coaches there are in NCAA football. There's always going to be some form of transactional component to coaching football, especially as it relates to playing time. But as we know from Borland, quality leaders use multiple leadership styles and strategies depending on each unique specific situation. Part of the servant leadership style has to include incorporating community building for intrinsic motivation, which ultimately leads to higher performance, both on and off the field. Having a mindfulness standpoint for growth, to lower anxiety, and to increase intrinsic motivation is paramount for the success of a football team. Mindfulness also has the ability to negate the possibility of groupthink leading to a crisis or other negative outcomes. A servant leader has to have plans in place to prevent crises in any way, shape, or form, which a football program is so large. Input from multiple stakeholders and all stakeholders is vital for success in developing crises plans, not only in response, but also in prevention. And as Thornton et al. Tells us, the largest ethical duty of a coach, football coach especially, as we see from many different sources, is the safety of those in the program. Some may hear all that and say, Patrick, why would you ever want to be a football coach if you have to deal with all that stuff? And all I can say is, my goodness, how can you not? It sounds wonderful to be able to serve the Lord through being a football coach and provide and build more servant leaders to better the world. Thank you for your time.